If you keep attracting emotionally unavailable people, you are most likely emotionally unavailable too. Now, I hear you say, no, I'm the one who's completely available to them. He's the one who's always avoidant, pulling away, or is unavailable in some way. I'm talking about a deeper fear of intimacy here. In always choosing others that can't connect deeply, it's a sign that you're not allowing yourself to open up deeply in relationship too. Now, your emotional unavailability is going to be different to theirs, but if you have a deeper fear of being rejected or a deeper fear of abandonment, and you didn't learn healthy intimacy from your earliest relationships in childhood, that kind of emotional unavailability is what we're talking about. And there might be this deep down fear, and you are actually deep down afraid of what you're going to find underneath because you feel like there's something really wrong with you. If this resonates with you, watch till the end, because I'm going to show you how to turn this around and become emotionally available. And if you're new here, welcome. My name is Amy, and I help women who keep falling for unavailable men to break the cycle of toxic romantic relationships by healing their core wound and embodying their true authentic self so they can be happy alone till they find a healthy match. And if you want more content on that topic, please click the subscribe button and hit the bell notification so you get notified when I post new lessons every week. So what does emotional unavailability in you look like? And I'm talking from personal experience here. The first sign is that you always attract emotionally unavailable people, or you keep having unhealthy relationships that follow the same pattern. Like you have the same relationship and you're just switching out the person every single time, and you feel like you're stuck in that cycle and you can't move on. Like attracts like here. And like I said, the emotional unavailable person that you're with, their signs may differ to yours, which is why you haven't identified them in yours yet. But both partners in that relationship will exist with little to no healthy intimacy, which is deeper intimacy. So it's a sort of safe relationship because neither people who are emotionally unavailable are allowing themselves to be fully seen, heard, and understood by the other person because of that aforementioned deeper fear of being found out, or there's something deeply wrong with you, so you just kind of don't want to go there. When we actually show our true selves, when we show up authentically, there's that risk of being rejected, of being abandoned, and your abandonment wound, your rejection sensitivity is what actually keeps you emotionally unavailable. And you might have this sense of controlling how you show up to your partner, like you have to say the right things, do the right things. You might be in a role, like you might be always the caretaker or always nurturing that other person, right? You're choosing someone that needs that. So when you take on that role, that means you don't have to actually show up as who you are underneath. That role allows you to be in the relationship safely. Now, the second aspect is that you experience deep loneliness in life. And this makes sense if you've always had relationships that are very superficial, where you haven't been fully seen, known, and heard. You kind of feel like no one understands you, that you're the black sheep in your family, you're the black sheep in your friends. Perhaps you've always had this really unusual path, but you just have this deep loneliness, and relationships never satisfy that. You never feel that deeper, healthy intimacy. And so you're kind of always left feeling lonely, whether you're in relationship or not. And because you've never actually experienced a healthy relationship where you've deeply had your needs met, you think this chronic loneliness is actually just quite normal, and there's probably a lot of people around you that also experience the same thing, so you've normalized it. But this loneliness is chronic, and it stems back to your childhood relationships, and it is a deep sign that you aren't allowing yourself to be seen and heard by others. You have that safety buffer there, and this is actually within your locus of control. So there's a part of you that actually consciously disconnects from others, consciously chooses to be alone. You might have a narrative that you are an introvert, or a narrative that you just don't do certain things, and you actually allow yourself to be more alone, and that triggers more feelings of loneliness. Now, the biggest sign that you are emotionally unavailable is signs that you self-abandon when you're in love. So if when you're in love, you always put others in front of yourself, and you can do this in familial love as well, with friends and with family, you always put others first, because in putting others first, you don't allow them to love you the way you are. You don't make yourself available to receive love. The energetic balance is completely out of whack because you're always giving, and that actually blocks receiving. So you equate love to probably acts of service or tasks or things that you do or roles that you take on because you don't feel worthy of love just as you are. And And if this is a role that you tend to take in relationship, whether it's the caregiver or the rescuer, I want you to watch this video next. So this is more of a transactional kind of love, which is a bit more superficial. Now, healthy relationships have transactions in them as well, but they are grounded in a foundation of two parties knowing each other and fully accepting each other just as they are without trying to change them, being able to be your true self, to fully show up in that way, and transactions operate in and around that. But this emotionally unavailable love is a very safe love, and it's a very kind of controlled love as well. And it is heavily distinguished by this transaction that you're showing up in a way that will get you love without you having to actually show who you really are. Now, how did you become emotionally unavailable? Were you born this way? The shorter answer is no. This is something that we learn. We learn from our earliest caregivers, our relationships, and there is some research to show nature is involved as well if you have a predisposition to being sensitive or empathic, but we're going to focus on the nurture aspect because it is, from what I understand, the primary aspect. We learn these patterns of behavior. So you learned this way of loving. This is how love was modeled to you, and because you learned it, you can unlearn it, and I will show you a little bit later how to do that. But there is a chance that if you are emotionally unavailable yourself, your parents were also emotionally unavailable. They didn't love you fully as you were. You had to perform for love. You had to be a certain way. You had to be a good girl, whatever that looked like. And they couldn't process their emotions, let alone help you process your strong emotions. So emotions were shut down, which is the definition of emotional unavailability. You're not available to experience and be in your own emotional body. So you saw your parents do that, and you learned how to do that yourself. And perhaps there was a degree of emotional immaturity with your parents as well, and you actually had to step up and actually parent them in a way, or you tried to as a young child. You know, you took on that caregiver role, right? That looking after them, always worrying about them or trying to intervene with them. All of these ways we were trying to get love all stop us from actually just being who we are and receiving love as our authentic self. So if this was how love was modeled to you when you were young, you are going to recreate it in your adult dynamic because that's all you know, right? There's a safety in this dynamic, right? Because you can kind of be in control of how close others get to you. And if you haven't learned to really open up and awaken to your own gifts, your own authentic self, and there's that fear of being found out of who you are, you want to keep others at a distance to you and safe in some way, because otherwise they would confront you about your uncomfortable parts and you would have to address them. So that's the sort of shadow side of this, but being emotionally unavailable stops you from being loved just as you are, because you're so busy trying to get love, you're trying to chase it, you're trying to be in that role that you learned from when you were very young and kind of fulfill this. Now, you're not going to be consciously aware that there's anything sinister, not that it's a sinister thing, but you're not going to be aware that this is a negative thing a lot of the time. If you're attracting constantly these toxic relationship dynamics and you're in really difficult, unhealthy relationships, that's obviously a bad thing, and that's what actually occurs from these relationships. But if we can become aware of our own patterns and focus on what's actually going on within us, we can turn this around. But interestingly, if we're stuck in this dynamic, we actually become more attracted to people that allow us to fulfill this dynamic, which means we're more attracted to those that are emotionally unavailable in the same way, because we can kind of play this safety game in that container. Now, what's actually driving this, and this is what I'm really passionate about, are these core wounds that cause us to become emotionally unavailable, to have these attachment issues. And there is a core belief that drives emotional unavailability, and it's a belief that you are unworthy and unlovable. Because you had a climate of dismissal and rejection from your parents or your earliest caregivers, you then believed about yourself that it's because of me that they're dismissing me. There must be something wrong with me, that they're not listening to me, they're not giving me my needs, right? And of course, it had nothing to do with you. They had their own dynamic going on. They had their own wounding. They had their own generational trauma that had been passed down to you. The only thing that was about you was that you were actually just there. But a child will make this a personal narrative to cope with the situation, because it makes more sense in terms of attachment safety to make us believe that it's our issue rather than think there's something wrong with our parents, because our parents are our primary caregivers and we need the safety of attachment with them. We can't believe that there's anything wrong with them, because that will actually shadow the world that we're growing up within. We actually can't tolerate any of those thoughts. So what forms is this negativity bias where we're always constantly perceiving life through the filter of I'm not enough, I'm not lovable as I am, I need to somehow perform for love or show up in a certain way, I can't be myself and receive love. Now, these core beliefs come from a deep fear of abandonment because in our earliest relationships, we were abandoned to a degree, whether it was emotionally, perhaps even physically. And, when we had a strong emotion, we were told it's not okay. And, we just weren't allowed to be our full self in our full expression. So we fear this abandonment. We fear this rejection coming because we experienced some kind of real-time rejection, whether it was capital T trauma or little t trauma in childhood. Now, I had a happy childhood, but there was not enough emotional availability around me in the family for me to feel fully seen, heard, and understood enough. And as a result, I felt abandoned. And this is really an aspect of the parenting style that I was raised in, right? You're just kind of left to deal with things on your own. You're told to go to your room. Because I was sensitive enough, I learned those messages that there was something wrong with me just from those practices. Now, the irony here around the fear of abandonment is that because we fear abandonment so much, we actually abandon ourselves to get love. We're always chasing externally to get love, right? There's this kind of like chase and this feel that we need to get love and we need to feel chosen by them in order to experience love. And we attach very quickly, we get our validation needs met from all these external places, and we tend to sabotage our relationships in this way, right? Because we fear rejection, we actually leave first, or we put things in place to have us leave, right? I'll leave you before you leave me. So we find reasons why the relationship is wrong, or we burn it down prematurely. Now, how do we actually turn this around? How do we become emotionally available? It is possible. I'm a walking testament of that, and it is obviously what I teach my clients as well. So I'm going to go through the 3 steps to becoming emotionally available. The first step is to learn how to show up authentically. Cut away any relationships that require you to be in that role, right? The caretaker or the fixer or the people pleaser. And this is going to be difficult because often it's going to be your family relationships where this dynamic is in place. So just take some time away from those relationships. Any relationships that take too much from you and they don't give back to you, you need to be rid of at this point in time. Start to speak your truth. Notice who respects you for your truth and who doesn't, right? Speak from your worth, what you offer as you are. Really come from a sense that you deserve respect and love just as you are. You don't need to do anything, say anything in a certain way. You just deserve it because you exist. And if you're dating in this situation and you want to turn around your emotional unavailability, I have a video on how to do that and how to be authentic with dating. You can watch that here. So pretty much we need to just give up this facade. We need to give up the facade of putting on a role or a mask in order to present ourselves to others, to save them from seeing the real us. It is so exhausting not being who we truly are. And at the end of the day, you're betraying your connection to yourself. You're causing a significant lack of self-trust and self-betrayal inside that is going to make things more difficult for you internally in the future. The second step is to start saying no. If you haven't already, remember the emotionally unavailable response is to people please and to not allow others to love you as you are. Now, you deserve to be loved even when you're saying no. Let me say that again. You deserve to be loved when you're saying no, okay? You deserve that and you can give that as well. But a lot of people aren't good at hearing no, right? They're just not used to it. And it's something we need to practice to do in different environments, whether it's at work or with your friends, with your family. That's a big one, obviously, as well as your relationships. Now, we also need to learn to say no to the internal parts of us that are causing this issue. And the biggest internal part is our inner critic. If you're emotionally unavailable, you have a super strong inner critic. And this is because that little child in you that believed your parents were not able to fully see, hear, and understand you because it's about you. That was the inception of the inner critic, right? So you've had this voice telling you you're wrong, you're not good enough, you're not worthy of love your whole life, and it's getting louder and louder because you're actually showing up unavailable as well. You're denying your authentic self, you're denying your authentic voice. So start to come into a relationship with your inner critic and disengage with this part. And a way that I teach this is to simply write down the thoughts that pop up, or the words or the voices that pop up that are your inner critic, just to write them on a piece of paper. And a lot of people say, well, why would I write them on a piece piece of paper, isn't that going to make them bigger? No, it actually separates them out from your internal world, because we're currently enmeshed with our inner critic. We're believing what our inner critic says. We need to separate them out and see, wow, look at those inner critic words and that voice. They are the artifacts of my earliest childhood experiences where I wasn't loved just as I am, and that was how I coped with the situation. I now no longer choose to believe those things. They are external from me. And if you're in a relationship with someone who's emotionally unavailable and it's turned into a situationship, you're not getting your needs met, you've got to cut those things off. Those relationships keep our emotional unavailability in place because they allow us to play in the same arena, right? We're just playing the same dance again and again. We've got to cut them off. We've got to say no, set healthy boundaries. Boundaries are self-care in this situation so that we can actually take stock of what's going on and start to do the next step, which is to heal your relationship to yourself. And that does start with looking at your inner critic, because in putting others before you and being in relationships that require you to perform for love, you're not actually allowing yourself to be who you really are. You've created a significant disconnect between your mind and your body, right? You're acting in one way and your body's needing these other things, but we're just ignoring it because we don't believe we're worthy of it. So look at what beliefs you have, what core beliefs around your own worthiness, your own ability to receive love. What are they right now? What dynamic from childhood might you be replaying? Look back at that dynamic, and it's not necessarily something really obvious, like if you had an alcoholic father, you always choose alcoholic partners. It could be a dynamic of someone that always rejects you in a certain kind of a way and you don't feel fully loved by them. How is that playing out from childhood to adulthood? And what deep down are you afraid of? This is the really yucky feeling that you have about yourself. It's the part of you that you hold close to your chest that brings in your insecurities. You don't want anyone else to see this part of you. What actually is in here? What's going on in there? What are the aspects of it? What are the fears? What are the beliefs? Start to shine a light on this dark part of you. Now we need to learn to heal and come into relationship with these deepest parts. And a great way to start is to focus on healing your inner child. And if you want to know exactly how to do that, I want you to watch this video next. Now our inner parts, as I've mentioned, are our inner critic. We also have often an inner gaslighter where we feel something and then no, don't feel that, don't believe that. And that just simply comes from being around parents who tell us what we're seeing and feeling and hearing is not actually what's going on, right? The level of gaslighting that just naturally happens in parenting teaches us how to gaslight ourselves, how to not trust what we're feeling, what our intuition is saying, what our body is actually experiencing. So call out these parts. Like I said, write them down, get them separate, separate yourself from these aspects of you that you know are causing internal discomfort. And the process of working through your relationship with these parts is exactly what I do in Heal Your Heart School. So if you want to apply to work with me in that container, I have a calendar link below. But the best place to start is to learn the 3-step process that I teach in Heal Your Heart School, and you can do that in the 1-hour masterclass, the proven 3 steps to self-love after a toxic relationship ends, and you can join that in the link below. I also have a Facebook group. I often go live and I love to meet people one-on-one in there, so please join that. And comment below if you have any questions about this video. I would love to hear from you. I will be in the comments. And if you found this video helpful, please click the like button to help us out in the algorithm. And for now, here are some next step videos for you to break the cycle of toxic romantic relationships and embody your true authentic self. And for now, I will see you in the next video.